Life Underwriting, KLU, and the Canadian Association of Gift Planners. He has given hundreds of seminars across Canada, to the public, to professional groups, to Canadian businesses and industry symposia, and aboard continuing education cruise ships around the world. He's been speaking about the important role of executors and on the estate tax strategies that advisors recommend for more than 20 years. Please join me in welcoming Mark O'Farrell to the stage.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Sean. Appreciate that. I recognize you're being here as a choice, so I just wanted to say thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I've been in financial services for 28 years, and it seems to me that my entire career I've been hearing about the greatest wealth transfer in Canadian history. The number $1 trillion has been bandied around over the next 20 years for, it seems, forever. And what's interesting is that actually came from a Toronto Star article headlined "Feds Drool Over Inheritance Taxes." I don't know if you'll remember it. It was written by a fellow named John Ferguson. What's interesting about that article is the date. It was published on July the 14th, 1995. So the 20 years that he was speculating about has come and gone. What's interesting is that the great wealth transfer has finally arrived. My point is that it isn't coming soon. What we're looking at here is a graph of the births in Canada from 1921 to 2009. And as soon as I see that, you will recognize the baby boomer bump. 1947, 1961, it always started in 47 because of the fact that the war ended in 45. It took a year to get the soldiers home, 3 months to find their sweethearts, 9 more months biology. 2 years, 1947, that's where we have the bump. And when people think about the whole wealth transfer, they think, you know, when the boomers start to die, we're going to see this big asset transfer finally arriving. But if you'll notice, the surge in births did not begin in 1947. It began in 1937, 10 years earlier. And everybody born in 1937 started turning age 80 last year. This massive octogenarian wave is upon us. The testator era has already begun, and it's going to take 24 years to crest. If you think my language is strong, consider this. The Conference Board of Canada called it a slow-motion demographic tsunami. So it is not coming soon, folks. It's already here. And what does that look like? If we look at some surveys and statistics, estimated Canadians without a current and valid will, 70%. Estimated assets now transferring to the next generation in the next 20 years, $1.5 trillion. Percentage of Canadians appointing a family member as their executor, 8%, pardon me. And of those executors already in the role who were surveyed, 47% report having administrative complications, 31% are having emotional issues, and already 26% report legal issues. If we put this together in a single sentence, this is what it would look like. Unprepared testators will transfer a lot of money with do-it-yourself executors who are already having problems. Will you be there to help them? Will you be ready? Because they need our help so much. How much is $1.5 trillion over 20 years? I think Vic Fideli did a fantastic job of expressing numbers this morning. And like him, I like to break this down into things that we can understand. This is what it looks like, folks. It is $300 million per day. $300 million per day. How do you make money in this business? You put a wheelbarrow outside and wait for it. It's that easy. And you might laugh, but by the end of this hour, you're going to realize that I am not blowing smoke. But the other thing you have to think about is, where is it falling from? According to Investor Economics, 98% of heirs do not intend to leave assets with, quote unquote, their parents' advisors. If that's you or us, folks, we've got a problem. So we have an opportunity in terms of engagement with regard to asset retention and asset growth. not to mention the biggest opportunity in a lifetime for permanent life insurance sales. So how do you position yourself at the core of the transfer? Learn, engage, and thrive. Learn is obviously the first thing, because we're not fools. We don't engage in conversations we can't carry. I am not going to ask you a question about your local hockey team if I know nothing about it and I don't follow that level of play. I'd be an idiot to do that, right? I'm not going to walk into a pub in Dublin, Ireland and ask about the rugby game and end up looking like an idiot 5 seconds later when they realize I don't follow rugby or I don't know anything about the game. So what happens when we're engaging with executors and we're asking them questions? How bold are we going to be if we can't follow up those conversations? And when they raise objections, my father would never go for that. How prepared are we to address that issue? So we need to learn. We need to learn what the executors need to know. The next thing is we need to engage. And I'll tell you, this is the easiest engagement you have ever seen. Because as I'll show you, they want to engage with us. And I guarantee you, if you learn and engage, you can't help but thrive. Because the need is so great and the assets involved are so overwhelming. I want to cover some terminology just to make sure we're all on the same page. Executor, female executrix, is the title of a person appointed by the testator to administer or execute their will and ensure their final wishes are fulfilled. In Ontario, we do things a little bit differently. We call that person the estate trustee with a will. And in Quebec, where they don't get all sentimental about these things, they call that person the liquidator. Testator, female testatrix, is the title of a person who dies with a will or who will die with a will. So we're really looking at those who are in estate preparation in terms of being testators and settlement being executors. Intestate is the opposite of testator. It's a person who dies without a will, and we'll see how serious that can be in a moment. And just for clarity, certified executor advisors do not act as executors, particularly not for their clients. It's frowned on by all the regulatory bodies, as it well should be. And more importantly, it's not the highest and best use of your time, as I will demonstrate. They are advisors to the executor. So, do you know who will be testators in the next 20 years? Is that a hard question? Not really. You just have to look at their heads, don't you? You got gray hair, white hair, blue hair, and a follically challenged like myself. Pretty easy. Do you know who will be executors in the next 20 years? It's much more difficult because they have no defining characteristics. I met an executrix recently, 82 years old. The first time I acted as an executor, I was 31. All we know is that these are average Canadians that are trusted and respected by their testator parents. So it's impossible to know without asking. And you can't even ask, have you been named as an executor? Because most of the time they're going to say, I don't know. So I asked the question, might you at some point in the future be named as an executor or executrix? And then what do? They start thinking, mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, right? They're going through all the people that they know that could possibly name them. And what are they doing for you? It's called prospecting. Because the next thing they're going to do is say, I need to go and find out. Say, great, when you do, let's come back together and talk about it again. So we do need to ask, but why would we? If you think about it, you haven't been engaging with executives until now. So why would you bother to start? Why do we want to know who these folks are? Let's think about who they are for just a moment. The people on the right have been meticulously hand-chosen by the people on the left to gather and protect all their worldly goods, to deliver to the people they love most in this world, to help them after they're gone and they can no longer do it themselves. Can you imagine a greater placement of trust, a greater position of responsibility? By virtue of their selection, the people on the right, are the most trusted and respected people in the lives of the people on the left. And yet, we completely ignore them. The people on the left, as we'll see, have a don't know, don't care attitude to their estates. The people on the right have a vested moral and legal responsibility to ensure successful estate settlement. They're the ones that are going to be dealing with the fallout from ill-prepared estates. They're the ones that it all matters to. The people on the left, generally speaking, don't want to talk to us, especially not about estate planning, but the people on the right are hungry to talk to us. The very first seminar, executor-facing seminar I did was in a community of about 100,000 people. I put an ad in the local paper, I booked a room in the local library. If I had called it estate planning, I might have got 20, 25 people out. But I called it estate planning for executors. And we had 600 people come out to that seminar. Amazingly, we had to hold it 6 times. Half the room, every session, were the testator parents that had already come out to find out what they got their kids into. The testators didn't want to come to an estate planning seminar, but they wanted to come to an executor planning seminar. It's unbelievable. I'm doing one for a charity in a couple of weeks, and they already sold out both events in a week. So it's absolutely amazing how much they want to talk to us. The other thing that's changed is estate legislation. In Alberta in 2012, sweeping changes to the Secession Act. In British Columbia in 2014. In Ontario in 2015. That represents 67% of all Canadians right there. Then the feds in 2016, affecting all Canadians. So every will in this country should be reviewed to determine whether it's valid and current. The way that I look at this, it's like the governments of the country and the demographics and the wealth transfer have all come together at the exact same time to give us the best opportunity in a lifetime to talk to Canadians. Consider that executors may turn to up to 17 different professions. So which one knows what the other 16 do for the executor? And as a result, who can they trust for general guidance? When we're dealing with executor issues, they don't know who to turn to. I had a call one day from a lady who said her sister was in the executrix. Her father had died. Her sister hadn't been in touch. She didn't know who to contact, didn't know how to go about it, whether it was an issue, nothing. I said, well, first of all, let's put this in perspective. When did your father die? And of course, I'm going to say, your sister is grieving, there's a lot of work to do, just be patient. She tells me her father died 3 years prior. She had no idea who to turn to. What our course does is it gives a broad, practical level of understanding of the perspective from all of these professions, giving you enough knowledge to be able to assess and direct and refer business out. And as a result, it puts you at the core, right in the middle of the circle, at the core of the greatest wealth transfer in Canadian history, side by side with the executor. Meet Mavis. Mavis, 92 years old, widowed, net worth $1.4 million, and she doesn't have a will. I was gobsmacked. I figured in the last 70 years she must have been heard, told, read at least 100 times that she should have a will, and yet she didn't. I explained to her, in the business that I'm in, I need to understand this. Why don't you have a will? She finally relented and she said, Mark, actually, it doesn't have a lot to do with me. After all, I won't be there. She's dead serious. Sweet little old lady. She goes on to explain to me that she has a very responsible daughter who was appointed her executrix years and years ago. She's very organized. She will be fine with it. It's not going to be a problem. I pointed out to Mavis that the will is where you appoint your executrix. No will, no executrix. That she had given her daughter the moral responsibility with no legal capacity to act. I pointed out her daughter was going to spend months tearing the house apart, looking for a will that didn't exist, and then have to go before a probate court judge and try to convince him or her that a woman of this stature and age did not have a will. Mavis now has a will. So what changed in everything she heard in 70 years? And when I spoke to her, I never talked about the money. I talked about the legacy, her daughter. And that little change changes everything. And Mavis is not alone. As I mentioned earlier, estimated Canadians without a current valid will, 70%. I suspect that number is low. Meet Cyril. This is a notice to creditors and others filed by the Public